Welcome to the Parenting Power Podcast, supporting parents with the real-life tools they need to raise the confident, interdependent people the world needs. Gail Bell and Julie Friedman-Smith interview experts who share their knowledge to assist parents in creating a home environment where kids can thrive.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Real Life Parenting Podcast. I'm Julie Friedman-Smith.
And I'm Gail Bell.
Today's podcast is brought to you by BeanersFuncuts.com. Parenting is hard. Haircuts shouldn't be. For a location near you, visit BeanersFuncuts.com. Our guest today is Lyda Bennett. Lyda is a speech language pathologist who for the past 20 years has loved helping children become better communicators. She currently works with preschool and school-age children in a variety of settings. Lyda is a mother of a busy 11-year-old son who still enjoys being the official tester of all her therapy games and toys. Welcome, Lyda.
Thanks so much for having me today. I'm excited to be here.
Lyda, we're really looking forward to learning so much from you. Can you explain to our listeners how important the early years of language development is and how, even as babies, that serve and return of sounds ultimately has a huge impact on the normal speech and language development of children?
For sure. The early years of language development are so critical for both brain and language development. Language development in those first 3 years of life can really shape a child's future because early language is the key to vocabulary development. It drives kindergarten readiness skills, impacts literacy skills, and these really are the foundation for successful life outcomes. So kids aren't really beginning to use first words until around their first birthday, but they're really communicating so much with us before that. So their pre-verbal communication includes making eye contact, crying, facial expressions, gestures, and babbling. And that's what they're using to communicate with their parents prior to having words. And in the past, people have always thought that the number of words a child was exposed to before their third birthday was really important for brain development. But now we know it's actually those conversational turns with their parents that are more important for brain building. So kids don't just need passive exposure to language. They really need to be an active participant in interactions with their parents and other people in their lives. And we talk about these back and forth communications as being serve and return interactions. Serve and return works like an imaginary tennis or a volleyball game between the child and the parent. But instead of hitting a ball back and forth, they're passing communication between the two of them. So one person serves by reaching out for an interaction, and the other one's returning that reaction by responding. And we really want both the baby and the parents to be initiating the serves. So for example, a serve might be a baby smiling and the parent smiles back. So the parent returns the serve by smiling. Or a baby might be pointing at a book and the parent says, "Oh, you want to read that story," and goes and gets that story to read to them. A parent might initiate a serve by starting a game of peekaboo, and so the baby returns that serve by laughing or covering their own face. The serve and return interactions can also involve words. So when a child first starts speaking, they might say one word, they might say ball, and a parent would return that serve by repeating or expanding on it, saying, "Great, a big ball." And that's how those interactions begin. And I was actually just at a conference, and there's a new program that Calgary Reads recently received a grant for, and it was super exciting. It's called Lena Start, and I believe it's the only program in Canada right now. It's being implemented all over in the United States. Lena stands for Language Environment Analysis, and it's a parent-child class, and right now they're doing it at both the YWCA, and it's just about to start with the program Family Matters. And so the parents and child attend these classes every week, but before attending, the child wears this cool little vest that has an electronic recorder in it, and that recorder is referred to as a talk pedometer. So much like a Fitbit's recording how many steps you take a day, this is recording the amount of words a child hears in a day, plus the amount of parent-child interactions, or those serve and return interactions. What they consider a serve and return interaction is if the baby serves something and the parent responds in 5 seconds, or vice versa. It's super, super cool. I was so excited about it. I'm trying to find out a way to volunteer with that program. The parents learn about the importance of the interactive talk, along with ways to incorporate more conversation into their daily routines. So the parents are given feedback about how much they're talking with their children. So when they attend the classes, they receive a printout. Nothing's recording the words that they're saying. It's just all data. So it might say you said 200 words to your child and you had 100 serve and return interactions. So then they learn ways to increase those things through reading and through playing games with their children. And the data is showing that adults are talking more to children and the children's language skills are increasing as a result. And so far from the data in the state, they know that children are gaining nearly 2 months of developmental school for every month that they're in the program.
Wow, that's so incredible to hear technology being used in a way that's really supporting parents being more aware of communicating with their kids.
Yeah, I think it's such an amazing program and so amazing that Calgary Reads has been able to start implementing it in Calgary.
Yeah. We know that the need for speech therapy is growing. Can you speak a little bit about how parents' use of phones and therefore lack of eye contact and daily speech interaction with their children is having a negative effect on their children's speech? You've mentioned it a little bit already in the sense that speech development is not all about sounds. It's also about that nonverbal interaction. But please share some more.
That's such a great question because I think as parents, we're often trying to limit our child's screen time, but we don't really think about ourselves and how much we're using devices in relation to child's language development. When my son was little, I was very conscious about how much screen time he was having each day because there were always news stories about how bad screens were for kids. And so I'd be conscious if he'd watched a show or was on my phone when we were out doing things. But I never really thought about how much myself being on my phone might be impacting his language development. So interactions parents are having with their kids while they're physically present, but they're distracted by their phones or their computers, are not ideal. In these situations, parents are less responsive, and over time it can be really damaging to speech and language development. If you're on your phone, you're having less of those serve and return interactions because we're missing our child's serves. So if they're looking at us or trying to engage us and we're on our phone, we just can't possibly be as reactive to what they're serving us, and we're also not providing serves to our children. And very early on, children can learn that that thing in their parent's hand is more important to them, and it really can have a negative impact on that social emotional functioning and parent-child interactions. If you were out with two friends for dinner, if friend A was only directing the conversation to friend B and completely ignoring you, you'd learn pretty quickly that they weren't interested in having a conversation with you, and you probably wouldn't want to interact with that friend again. So as much as we're concerned about screen-obsessed kids, we should probably be just as concerned about tuned-out parents. So parents really need to put down their phones and make communicating with their kids more intentional.
Yeah, and when you said they're missing those serve and returns, you said ideally within the first 5 seconds. So that is not a lot of time. If your head's up and you're interacting with your children, 5 seconds is a lot of time, but it's certainly not if you're looking down. So that is just so key for us all to remember, and it's pretty concrete data. So super important that we're sharing this with our listeners. Now, you have given us some really great things already around what parents can be doing every day, but maybe you can just share your knowledge on just some more really simple and easy things parents can take away from this podcast that they can start doing with their children during their day to support that healthy and normal development of their children's speech and language.
There are so many things parents can be doing every day, and I think parents probably are doing a lot of them, but making the things that you're doing more intentional can make you more aware of what you're doing and what you're not doing. So one of those things is just talking, putting what you think your child is trying to communicate to you into words. So if they are looking at an object, you can name that object. If they see bubbles, say, oh, those are bubbles. Do you want to play with them? If they're pointing up at a swing, rather than just placing them in the swing, say, oh, you want to go in the swing. Let's go in the swing and mom will push you. And you also want to be talking about what you're doing throughout the day and what you're thinking about. And for some parents, this doesn't come naturally. So you really want to just start with narrating what you're doing. Basically pretend you're in a documentary and what would people be saying that you were doing. You think it's of little interest, but to your kids, it's interesting. When my son was little, I would have him in his bouncy chair beside me while I did everyday tasks, and I would tell him the steps that I was doing, like what I was doing for making dinner or for sorting laundry. And the other thing was I was getting those tasks done while he was awake. We were still interacting, but it meant when he was down for a nap, I had time to do other stuff that I maybe wanted to do, read a book or something that I wasn't doing when he was awake. With that being said, you don't want to be doing all the talking. You really need time to tune into your child and respond to their serve. You want to be looking at your baby when he makes sounds and talking back to him, responding, especially in those first few months, responding when the baby is making a face or smiling, making the same face back to them, really getting that interaction going back and forth. And when they start babbling, even before they have words, having pretend conversations with them and responding to the things they say with what you think they're trying to talk about. And there's a really good video that was going around on Twitter, and it was a dad and a child sitting on a couch having a whole conversation. And throughout the conversation, the child doesn't actually ever say any real words. But the interaction back and forth between them, it's a 2-minute long video, and it is amazing. The gestures and the way the dad is a speech therapist's dream. His interactions with this child are amazing. And I just rewatched it last night when I was thinking about this, and I think I Googled dad, toddler, couch conversation, and it was the first video that came up. And if you haven't seen it, it is such a great example of serve and return communication between a parent and child.
It was just so funny, and the child was so engaged, and the fact that there weren't any real words there was irrelevant because the child is just having a blast, believing that they're having a complete conversation with the dad.
And you also, when you watch it too, the dad was believing that he was having a complete conversation with the child.
Yeah.
The interaction was so natural back and forth.
Yeah, it was fabulous.
Another thing people should be doing every day is reading. It's a great way for them to hear new language, to be exposed to new topics. It's never too early to start reading, and keep reading. Even when your child becomes a reader, keep reading to them every day. There's something so special about that relationship with a parent and child when they're reading together. And Jacques still loves me to read to him now, even though he's 11. Unfortunately, I can't pronounce any of the characters' name in Harry Potter, but he's patient with me still. And when you're reading books to kids, you really want to make them interactive. You don't just have to read the words on the page. Point out things in the pictures, ask questions, use the book, if it's a book the children are familiar with, to get them to guess what's going to happen next, even if they're not familiar with it, thinking about what could be happening next. Reading to your child just teaches so many language and literacy skills that are needed later on in school, things like how to hold a book, how to turn the pages. It teaches them that words are related to the pictures. It teaches listening, memory skills, new vocabulary, and have books everywhere in your house. Don't just read to kids at bedtime. So all the books are in the bedroom. Read during the day. Read whenever you see your child show interest in a book. And the last thing, which we've already touched on, is putting screens away. We talked about limiting parental screen time, but you also don't want your kids on screens all the time. When it comes to language, you are their best teacher. No TV show, app, or computer game teaches language. Sesame Street doesn't teach language. Leapfrog doesn't teach language. Some of those shows may teach new concepts or vocabulary, but language is interactive and screens are not interactive. So there's a time and a place to have screens, but it's not all the time. We really should be limiting how much time kids have access to TV and other screens.
Lots of great information there. So many things that we can put into play in our homes, regardless of the ages of our kids. So thank you for that. Now, Lyda, we always ask our guests if they have a real-life parenting tool that they've used in their own families. Do you have one that you could share with us?
I have a few, actually. I was trying to think about things that I've done with Jack to build those serve and return interactions throughout his life. And when he was little, it was really reading. And we read tons of books that were repetitive and we read them over and over again. So a book like Brown Bear, he would begin to anticipate words. And so at first we'd be brown bear, what do you, and he might fill in C. And then later on, he might participate along in all those words that we were doing, or he might remember what the brown bear saw next. Mm-hmm. Books are so great for those serve and return interactions. And another thing that I would do would be have some of his favorite items where he could see them, but he couldn't access them by himself. So we would have bubbles up on a shelf, and so he had to request them so that we could play them together. So putting things where he could see them, but didn't have access to them. We playing games with him that were just a little bit above his developmental level, so he couldn't do them all by himself. He required me to help him with them. So wind-up toys, he couldn't wind them himself. He needed to ask me so that we could wind them up and play them together.
So it sounds like you're really creating situations that encourage him to use language or communication to move it forward.
That's exactly right. And then now we try to take time each day to do something together where no one is on a phone, the TV's not on. And when we're doing those things, that's when I really hear about his day. If we're playing a game of ping pong or if we're taking the dogs for a walk, he tells me so much more about what's going on in his life. And I've always, since he was little, been very conscious of asking him specific questions rather than general open-ended questions. So asking him, how was school today? I just get fine. Or what did you do at school today? Nothing. But if I ask him, who did you sit beside at snack today? Or who did you play with at recess? It gets him talking and we can have a real conversation about things. And it gives him something very specific to focus on and think about.
Wow, those and all the other tips you've given us already as far as things we can be doing. I have to admit that 5 seconds is stuck in my brain. The other thing that is a real takeaway for me, being an ex-early literacy specialist, is real books. Read real books, hold real books with your children versus reading on a tablet or a screen with them. So thank you for supporting us in that thought as well. Speaking with you today has been so interesting, so much information for us to take away and start applying today with our kids. Lyda, if listeners want to find out more information from you, where is the best place for them to follow you?
They can reach out to me at lyda@springot.com, and that's Lyda. And the springot.com website has a great blog for more practical information about both language and motor development.
Oh, those sound like great resources. Thank you so much, Lyda, for just underlining all of these important concepts that are great reminders for parents and maybe eye-openers for some. Our listeners, I know, will benefit from this. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a great opportunity to be able to share some information.
Thanks, Lyda.
We hope that you've enjoyed this episode of the Real Life Parenting Podcast. If you're looking for more real-life parenting tools, then please sign up for our weekly Thoughtful Thursday email newsletter. It's free and it's really good. Just visit our website, parentingpower.ca, to subscribe. While you're there, check out our book, A Year of Intentional Parenting. Like this podcast, the book was created to help you feel confident, capable, and calm. Thanks so much for listening, and we look forward to connecting with you again right here every Monday.